What's up, everybody? Hey, let's get this camera adjusted. It looks a little weird. It's your boy, Uncle Hammy. I didn't think I was going to be able to get this stream off today. I had it set for this morning, and I'll be honest, I wasn't that prepared. But am I ever really? And then life came and teenagers and had to run around and do stuff. No big deal. So I set it up for later in the day, and then that got weird. Not too weird, but you know how Saturdays can be, right? The best laid plans of mice and men. So anyways, I'm here. I was going to do 6:30. I decided to start it now. Get going because honestly, I want to get through it. I'm trying to put content up at least 2 times a week. No professional streamer here. Just an old man with a camera and a computer. So if you've been following me, I've been streaming on YouTube, a little bit on Facebook at the same time. I can stream in a couple places at once. So I've been streaming to like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook all at the same time. Decided to stop streaming to Facebook and maybe try streaming to Twitch and YouTube at the same time. Also, I got to go into Twitter. Now, so if you've never seen me on Twitch before, congratulations. I would like to congratulate you on seeing me for the first time. I'm not your average Twitch streamer, right? It's going to be a just chatting, and I'm an old man. It's going to be like listening to, hopefully not your dad, more like your uncle. That's why my name's Uncle Hammy. Maybe you're like your cool uncle. I wouldn't say funkle. I ain't that fucking much fun, but I'm pretty cool. Let me just take a look at it. I wanted to let you guys know because I only started doing this about, I don't know, 2 months, not even 3 months, and started on YouTube with literally 0 followers, and we're up to 171. That, I gotta be honest, is pretty cool. I didn't think that was gonna happen, especially since, honestly, my content's shit. It's shit. But it's my content. So, anyways, what we're going to talk about today, what I want to do something today is, I want to talk about this guy, Dr. Stephen Greer. Now, you would think I could say the name Stephen correctly, considering it's my first name, but obviously I can't today. So, Dr. Stephen Greer is a CSETI and is part of the CSETI, actually the founder, the head of the CSETI and Disclosure Project. He is like the eminent expert on ufology, a lot of different things. And he's had numerous very successful documentaries. I mean, you can find his documentaries right now all over, probably Prime, Tubi. They're going to be on Tubi. I can tell you that right now. They might be on Netflix. He's got a tremendous catalog of different documentaries, and there's a little bit of controversy around the guy. And I'm kind of struck with I believe in UFOs. Okay. I think there's life on other planets, and I believe that they've probably come here. Probably. I don't know. I like watching those documentaries. Some of them are really fucking stupid. Some of them are pretty good. His are pretty good, but he's got some weird shit about him. So I thought we'd kind of dig in and watch some videos, some different videos about him, and I'd give him a little bit of commentary. And let's just do learn a little bit. Now, I saw a really good on the Sean Ryan show a month or so ago. He did a great piece with him. It was like 2 hours or something like that. 2.5 hour interview. And I thought that was, I enjoyed it. I watched it. I watched it in parts, but I watched it a couple of times. And, so anyways, maybe we'll jump into a little bit of that. I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing of that, but I got some different videos I want to look at. And there's, some put out by him, and then there's some controversial stuff. So let's just jump on over here. And I think I want to start with this one Actually, I think I want to start watching. Hello? What are you doing? You are giving me technical difficulties. I think I want to start with this one.
You ever feel like you're being watched over here? Like,
I think I already started. Let's back up and let's get a little full screen.
It's about using that power. And as I've said to them many times in the last few months, you're either going to make the U.S. government relevant on this issue or not. And I don't control that. But all I can do is advise this is the approach you should be taking.
you ever feel like you're being watched over here? Like, people following you? You ever look over your shoulder?
No, I don't worry about that, no. There was a time I did. But, there are other ways to do.
So now he claims he was almost assassinated 2 times, like 20 years ago, and that he's put security in place at this point. But I think 3 or 4 of his associates were assassinated because of the work that they've been doing, and that's
that, obviously. Even if your cell phone is off, totally off, they're tracking and monitoring. All my email is continuously monitored. Anything important that gets to me gets diverted, as you've seen. Now this is happening now to some of the folks in the investigation here in DC, and I said this is just to be expected. You're not going to, be able to get around that. But it's, look, when you look at the way back in 1950, the Wilbur Smith document where he said, this is the most classified project in the history of the United States, exceeding the development of the hydrogen bomb, right? Because we hadn't detonated the hydrogen bomb yet. And it is to this day still in that level, except it went deep black beyond constitutional oversight between 1945 and 1955. That was the decade, by the way, where the whole thing went off the rails. But the technologies and the capabilities they have, even people who are read into National Security Agency, CIA, and National Reconnaissance Office technologies and satellites, they're not read into the means that this organization has, this covert secret government group. And that's why they're always shocked, because they think they're using encryption and everything's known instantly. They think they're, in a skiff, and everything that's done in there is known instantly. And I warn people, I started warning people that in 1993, when the man who set up my meeting with the CIA director wanted me to be going to phone booths talking in code, so nobody would know. And I said, John, this is not going to work.
all right. That's a little piece from one of his documentaries. Let's go to, I want to take out the Cosmic Hoax Exposed. Let's check this out. It's like 16 minutes. Now, this is one of his pieces. Yeah. The cosmic hoax has been unfolding for 60 years. We are quickly approaching a point of no return.
I've been warning about this for decades.
Now, this is the new documentary that's coming out, I believe. It goes a little bit, all his stuff goes
Not that, this.
deeper.
Speaking
They're
of
just
conspiracy theories that actually have truth at the bottom of them, the Corona Relief Bill the President signed last month contains a provision that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. It directs the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of other agencies, to disclose what they know about UFOs within 180 days. So what are they going to tell us?
I provided briefings for 4 presidents, foreign heads of state, generals, and a sitting CIA director who later betrayed me. I've seen lives destroyed,
William Colby has been missing since April 27th. His canoe was found washed up on the banks of the Wicomico River.
Friends murdered. Unthinkable evil unleashed on our planet. All to protect this illegal and immoral secrecy. And nothing I've seen scares me more than this unprecedented moment we are living through. We're in the final hour of an agenda that has been playing out for nearly a century. Centralized monopolies of power in government, the defense industry, and the corporate media are all converging on the same narrative.
So I'm just telling you right now, if you're a fucking conspiracy nut, this is your cat. Because it's not just conspiracy. I mean, it's all a big conspiracy. But this all plays back to this giant global cabal that has to do with shadow governments and aliens and all that stuff. I find it fascinating. I don't know if I believe all of it, but it's compelling.
That extraterrestrials are real, they're here, and they're a threat.
Those are not weather balloons. Those are clearly autonomous aircraft of some kind that are, as you put it, swarming U.S. military craft. So there are two options.
Under intelligent control. These are craft under intelligent control, and they're flying with impunity, Tucker, within our airspace.
That's Jeremy
and,
Corbell.
They can outmaneuver, outperform.
Another big documentary guy in the UFO space.
We need to find out who's operating them and also what the intent is.
Also, I find Tucker to be
the truth is we do know who's operating them. Some are indeed extraterrestrial, and they are absolutely not a threat, as you will see. It is, in fact, the secrecy that is an existential threat to life on Earth and beyond, as stated by the first CIA director, Vice Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter.
Roscoe!
In 2020, I was asked to brief the President and Vice President on a situation that completely spiraled out of their control. They had been lied to.
Think he's actually going to get arrested on Tuesday?
We cannot stop what is coming if we don't finally confront the truth. This may be one of the most important photographs ever taken. A dissection of an unknown humanoid from sometime in the 1920s.
It clearly isn't human. I don't call it extraterrestrial for one reason. We don't have the history of that it came out of an interstellar craft. We don't have the genetics on it. And there are a group of doctors who are obviously doing the dissection, and then there are suits, very much.
And who are those fuckers right there?
In the perimeter, watching. A woman called me up a few months ago whose mother was a seamstress on the atomic bomb project and built the covering for the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So she was cleared to the A-bomb project. She was then, of course, moved to the only atomic bomb squadron in the world at Walker Field, which is where Roswell is. At that time, she acquired this photo. How do we know? We tested the paper to establish that it was pre-19 early 50s. And it's a photo of a photograph. And so we do a whole research project on it. We have it analyzed by the top medical archivists in the world, Dr. Burns in Manhattan, who establishes that it is the 1920s. We have the top clothing experts at the Metropolitan Museum of Art determined that those absolutely are from the 20s. So medically, clothing, everything. But if it is what we think it is, it means that there had been targeting and retrieval of extraterrestrial material.
I got young blood in the chat. If you saw our last stream, that's my boy, Conspiracy Dave. He says the House is majority red, no indictment. They've been saying that for 10 years. Bro, I'm just saying, man. Trump himself says he thinks he's getting arrested on Tuesday. And this is just for the first thing. This is that Stormy Daniels bullshit. Okay? Like, this is the first one. And then they're saying in another couple of months, there's indictments coming down for... This hasn't have anything to do with this House or the Senate. This is coming out of Florida, or is this one Georgia? No, this one's Manhattan. These are state indictments, and then there's federal things coming. So Trump himself, I guess he on truth, what's his like Twitter like thing, said that he thinks he's getting arrested on Tuesday. I mean, I'll believe it when I fucking see it, but I mean, he said it himself. So, anyways, I'm glad you're here, buddy.
Real and beings.
I'll fucking bring you in to this show if you want. You know me. I like having you around.
Another whole chapter. Now, the reason I think that's quite possible, I've had members of my team who've been in the vault and in the classified projects who have seen top secret files going back to the late 1800s and early 1900s dealing with ETs and ET craft and beings. So everyone thinks everything happened at Roswell. No, this goes back longer.
Think about that. At least 100 years of UFO secrecy. Do you really think this guy, or this guy, or God forbid, this guy, really have a grip on this issue?
Excuse me, I didn't mean to fart out of my mouth.
They don't. This is why heads of state from around the world come to me, a retired medical doctor, to get the truth about this phenomenon. And sadly, they don't have the power to do much about it once they know the truth.
Right on, you tell your old man I said, I'm glad you jumped in. Tell your old man I said hi.
Intelligence and aerospace.
Hope you guys have a nice dinner.
At the National
Thanks
Press
for
Club
chatting with me. It gets lonely out here by myself, buddy.
Conference that would change the world forever.
The men and women who are on this stage and the some 350 additional military intelligence witnesses to the so-called UFO matter and extraterrestrial intelligence can prove and will prove that we are not alone.
This marked the public debut of the Disclosure Project and the launch of the global disclosure movement to end UFO secrecy and disclose technologies that would end poverty, climate change, and the use of fossil fuels overnight and transform every aspect of life on Earth.
So this is one of his big things. He said, and I want to believe this, is that we've basically solved this fossil fuel energy thing 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, with Nikola Tesla involved in it and all that, and that has been suppressed. And I know there's a lot of people that believe that has been suppressed, and it is all tied up in this UFO disclosure and all that. He goes more into it.
One of the biggest bombshells at that 2001 press conference was the testimony of Carol Rosin, an aerospace executive who worked beside Wernher von Braun, the Nazi rocket scientist who came to America after World War II to work for NASA. Carol received his deathbed confession, a testimony so terrifying that we spent the last 20 years trying to warn about it.
Now, here was von Braun sitting at a desk when I first met him, explaining to me that he was told he only had 3 to 6 weeks to live, but that he was going to stay alive long enough to teach me what the real game is that's going on. And it started out when I was in the industry, the Russians were the threat. We had to build space-based weapons against the Russians. And then third world countries called nations of concern at that time. And then the asteroid threat, which I thought was kind of comical that we could just put weapons up there to shoot down or steer an asteroid. And then it leads to the last card.
And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
He explained to me that there was a moment when we were going to be told that the extraterrestrial beings, that their craft were a threat, and they were not.
So that's this whole thing that he has, that the extraterrestrial beings are not a threat, but they're played to us like they're a threat. The same reason that they did that shit to us when I was a kid, because I'm old, with the Soviet Union, with Korea, Vietnam, communism, to enrich the military-industrial complex. So the next one's going to be the extraterrestrials.
These craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down.
Let's go now, because we're jumping around. I'm going to jump around a little bit on you guys, and that's just how that's going to be. I want to watch some of this from Sean Miller. I thought this was pretty enlightening.
Dr. Stephen Greer is one of the world's foremost authorities on the subject of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and exotic technologies. For more than 30 years, Dr. Greer has provided briefings for senior government officials across the globe, conducted numerous media interviews, and delivered hundreds of lectures. He has written 5 books and produced 4 feature film documentaries that have been seen by hundreds of millions of people. He is currently working on a documentary.
I recommend going and watching this episode. I think it's
called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It.
Which
The
episode?
documentary addresses how energy solutions have been suppressed in the past and how they could now come out for the benefit of all mankind using an open source strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been telling you that I was going to dive into this subject for a long time, and now we have one of the leading experts on extraterrestrials and free energy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Stephen Greer to the Sean Ryan Show. If you haven't, please go down, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave us a comment.
Hit that for me, guys. I can use it.
Information with everybody you know. I want to give a special thanks to all of our patrons for supporting the show. It's because of you guys that this happens. I also want to thank everybody who's just watching the show.
They're dealing with this. And we had set up a protocol where we had made contact with these objects. That ended up being on the front page of the Pensacola, Florida paper.
This fucking set that Sean Ryan has is dope, man. I gotta say, I love that shit. I don't know if I enjoy all of his podcasts or not, but dude, this set is off it.
Army intelligence and CIA found out about it, and then they came in and started asking me, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And that started a whole process where there were friendlies and unfriendlies in the U.S. government and other governments who reached out. And the friendlies were people who were very much read into some of these projects, who knew that they had been managed illegally. And they began to advise me. Now, never been in the U.S. government, never been in the military, never been in the intelligence community. So I started out pretty cold and pretty green. I'm an emergency doctor, trauma, big ER. Each of us saw 6,000 people.
See, this is the thing that sucks me in with Dr. Stephen Greer, is that the way he speaks, it's very measured and calming and like reassuring. And that's why I think he's been like an expert in the field for years. But he also has some ideas and some processes that are honestly, I think, are just fucking nuts. So like, I still to this day, and I've been following this guy for decades, I can't tell if he's legit, if he's just nuts, but he believes what he's saying. And like, there's kernels of truth in parts of all of it. Or lastly, if he's just a fucking charlatan. Like, I can't tell. But let's see, what's my auto quality? Yeah, auto. So I don't know. So you tell me.
The Gun and Knife Club, we called it. And by 93, I was being asked to go up and.
Yeah, I saw you said Bob. I didn't call you out.
The CIA.
That's all right, bro.
Clinton, R. James Woolsey. Now, I'm a 30-some-year-old medical doctor going up, and the letter that came to me, and this is the key point I want to make, stated, and I have it, it's in my archive, it's going to come out pretty soon publicly, and it says, you're going to be the first person to brief the Clinton administration and the director of the CIA on this issue, because they've made inquiries and have been denied access. Now, huge red flag should go over everyone's head right now. You're talking about the President of the United States, the director of the CIA, making through channels an inquiry on something that they know is happening, and they're being denied access. So immediately I knew either that was a lie or the whole enterprise has gone off the rails. in terms of being managed illegally and improperly. So at that point, I went up, took the meeting. The cover story was a dinner party for me and my wife and the CIA director and his wife, who was the chief operating officer of National Academy of Sciences, and our host, who was a think tank director for the Pentagon, and his wife. So there's 6 of us. And sure enough, he was very shaken. He absolutely had not been read in. And so I provided him a lot of information.
All right,
I brought a whole briefcase full of evidence.
Speed this up because I ain't watching a 2-hour documentary.
So this was all happened kind of prior to my stand-up briefing at the Pentagon for him, which happened in 1997, over 25 years ago, 26. And it was a very disturbing event for him. For me, by then, I was battle-hardened. I realized what was going on. He was shocked that he had been threatened and denied access to these projects. I wasn't, because I said, well, you're in good company. The SecDef, Secretary of Defense has, the President, the Director of the CIA.
This guy's 67 years old. Would you look at the fucking veins in his arms, and his forearms, and his hands, right? Like, I know some people are just naturally that way, right? And he's got to be one of them. But, like, it's fucking off the hook.
And by then, I had met with key members in the Congress and Senate Intelligence Committee. They had all been pushed. I mean,
bro could play Skeletor to fucking a live action.
So by then, I had already accepted this new paradigm of there being,
just
as
fucking
Senator
ropes.
Inouye said, and I'm quoting, there's a secret government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own funding mechanism that's above the law and free from the law itself. I'm almost giving an exact quote here. And, you know, that's something that most people have to understand first off here, is that what we're dealing with is not a sanctioned or even a normal black project. And I can say this with authority because I am working now with people who literally manage the black budget of the United States currently. And they were denied access to all these projects. They had no idea that there were deep black pass-through projects. We'll get into this. How is this done? Structurally, organizationally. What's the architecture? So it took me a long time to unravel this. Mm-hmm. And I had to do it through multiple documents, corroborating witnesses, people on the inside who came forward. So in 2001, by then, I had concluded neither the White House nor the Congress was going to touch this. So we launched the Global Disclosure Project, where I gathered together the first 20-some of these military and some corporate people and had a press club event. It ended up being seen by about 800 million people. Interestingly, the first hour of it was jammed. There had been jamming devices put on the structure of the National Press Club.
Let's go to
2023 as an entrepreneur has been finding the right person for the job and making my company stand out amongst all the other companies in this extremely competitive job market. Now, how can you do that?
Well, commercial.
Properly, legally. It wasn't.
Yeah.
So they were used. And I think
that's why it was the most replayed. It was a fucking commercial.
And so they have no liability. And now they're protected by the law, and they're protected, if we have to, tactically for security, which I have. But I think at this point that sort of thing, it can't happen because the profile on this is so high. You know, I have a bunch of celebrities who like what we're doing. Something like that happens that I know about in my team, you know, there would be 1 billion people know about it.
I'm going to jump to the new documentary part.
Well, that's good.
I want to watch this part.
Let's talk about your new documentary and what's coming up in that.
Yep. Well, if you go to the lostcenturyfilm.com, you'll see it's crowdfunded. So give you an idea, all these documentaries we've done, we won't let a corporation or a studio fund it. We've
crowdfunded. So I like that part.
Can you explain why you have that way?
It's so that it can't be corrupted.
I knew it.
We control 100% of the content. Nothing can be taken out.
Good for you.
I have final control over what's in and what's out. And it can't be watered down. by some corporate shill or some media executive who's actually just been bribed by the government or some corporate entity working on behalf of this secret government. So I'm very careful about it. And that's why we did it, because I tried doing things with other people with their productions, and they would take it, spend it, mutilate it.
Yeah.
And I went, no, we need to do this ourselves with integrity. So it's crowdfunded, you know, and like this film, the Lost Century Film.com, we've had one donor for $150,000 and a bunch of people who donated $3. It didn't matter. But now we're at $421,000 out of a $500,000 budget. So we're 84%, if my mind's calculating correctly. You can run a calculator. You have to do this as an emergency doctor. And you know, so we're getting there, but we need people's help.
I just checked. Looks like we're streaming on Twitch. I ain't got anybody watching, but it's happening. So that's kind of cool.
Of it.
What up, Twitch?
And it's going to pull the curtain back, specifically on the lost 100 years of these technologies. And it's going to go all the way back, more than 100 years, to the Stubblefield Earth battery, and Nikola Tesla standing there with his old farmer, where he's running his whole farm on this device where he has stakes in the ground that are tapping into this electromagnetic and mostly magnetic flux field and running generators.
Now, I've heard about this my entire life. That, like, man, look at that picture of him. He's looking fucking nuts. Dude, he's got look at the veins. Like I said, look at the fucking veins. Anyways, I've heard about this fucking battery shit and that we should have free electricity like my whole life. I'm 56. I've heard about it my whole life. My old man used to talk about this shit, right? So it's not new, but I don't know enough about it. So I'm looking forward to the documentary.
This is 1902.
It's in 1902.
1902. And Nikola Tesla is standing there. I got the picture. This documentary is going to blow. It goes from that all the way to the Lockheed Skunk Works devices that started being built in the 50s. We have witnesses and transcripts of the Norton Air Force Base show, California. Norton's closed now. But they had an air show in 1988 where there were 3 of these man-made UFOs, ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, hovering in this hangar. And
see what I mean about how he talks?
We have those fully illustrated. We have enough detail.
Like, I bite on it.
Of the interior.
I don't know if it's just working on me, but
and the exterior.
Like, I want to believe him. I really do.
Interestingly, the witness who was there, who was an aerospace designer, saw that the components in it, now this is 1988, were from the late Mercury era. So the Mercury capsule, which was late 50s, early 60s. And they had markings and chars on them where they had been out in space around our solar system. They were specifically told these had gone through the solar system. Now, those were from the late 50s, early 60s. No jet fuel, no rockets.
Are these going to be in the doc?
Yep, everything. So this is going to be shocking. It's going to be a shocking thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's about an hour and 48 minutes right now. We're just finishing it. We just had a great guy who's a supporter, the Limp Bizkit lead guy, Fred Durst. He's agreed to narrate it.
That kind of throws me off.
Narrating it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I just got out of a studio with him a couple of days ago where we're laying down the track for the narration. But he's a great guy, very smart, super supportive of what we're doing.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So what else is going to be in there?
Well, we're going to actually have a lot of the devices going through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s that weren't the flying devices. But I'll give you an example. There was an inventor named Floyd Sweet, and he had a solid state device, looked like a little bigger than a cigarette pack, that you could attach to an electric motor, say for a car. It wasn't plugged in. It once it got going.
This part trips me out.
0 point quantum vacuum flux, and it would run a 300 horsepower motor. So imagine having a 300 horsepower motor in your Tesla or your truck, and this little, and there are no batteries. You don't have 900 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, and the lithium-ion batteries really are destroying the environment. And you never have to plug it in. About the time he was going to get, he was meeting with some people at GM who thought they were interested, but they were actually just trying to find out what he had. After that meeting, he died suddenly.
Of course he did.
How? People claiming, well, he dropped dead of a heart attack. And that was plausible because he was an elderly guy. Mm-hmm. But before that, he had an assassination attempt. He was going up some steps, and a sniper was trying to shoot it, but he didn't know it, but he tripped just as the bullet went right past his head.
That's the stuff that is kind of bullshit.
Lieutenant Colonel who was involved in this case.
It's like fucking MCU shit.
He was a physicist also. This is going to be shocking to people.
Oh, yeah.
It's utterly shocking.
Now look at this.
These mysterious deaths. Some people
look at this fucking... I want to watch this JFK Marilyn Monroe stuff. Jump with me here.
Stock in ExxonMobil. But, so...
Let's move into the JFK Marilyn Monroe assassination.
Oh, some of the fun stuff.
Yeah. Let's move into that.
Yeah.
I know about that.
A lot. So some years ago, I got from the vault from a national security agency guy an envelope, and it had a big old Xerox of this document that was a wiretap of Marilyn Monroe, dated a couple of days before they found her dead.
Now remember, he gets all this stuff, but he was an ER doctor. Okay, he wasn't like part of the NSA. There's a part of me that thinks he's a fucking Fed, and this is all just a fucking con, right? Like there is a part of me that absolutely thinks that. But then again, he says that about other people. This is where this conspiracy shit is nuts, because other people say, some people kind of talk about him like maybe he's a Fed, and I get that vibe. But then again, I fucking think everybody's a fucking Fed. Except for me, and maybe I am. I don't even know. But then he'll talk about other people like Tom DeLonge and Jeremy Corbell and like other people like they're a fucking Fed. So I don't know. Is everybody a Fed? Maybe there's fucking Feds in the chat. I don't know.
Signed by the CIA guy, James Jesus Angleton III. Now, he was a famous fanatical mole hunter and leak stopper at the agency back in the early 60s. Fanatical. And they had wiretapped Marilyn Monroe's phone, and she was calling up Bobby Kennedy and a friend of hers named Rothberg in New York, who was an art dealer, saying that she was going to hold a press conference to tell the whole world what Kennedy had told her about, and I'm quoting, the objects from outer space from the 40s found in New Mexico, a clear reference to Roswell and a couple of the other events that happened out there. That was the only one, by the way. There was a 1945 crash of an ET craft that happened right after we detonated the first atomic bomb. That has just gotten a Trinity site that has just gotten documented by a good friend of mine, Paula Harris, who's a researcher. It's a fascinating book. So, and there's material associated with that. But so Marilyn, because I think the Kennedy brothers had distanced themselves because the affair she was having with Jack Kennedy was a little bit getting too well known, she was angry. And so she was threatening to spill the beans in a public news conference where the whole world would have been there.
How everything comes back to fucking Jack. If there's people watching this right now that don't even know who fucking President Kennedy was or Marilyn Monroe, believe it or not. Like everything always comes back to this assassination.
So before she could do that, Wetworks killed her, made it look like an overdose of drugs, but it wasn't. One of her friends way back in the day was this old cool guy. He was named Burl Ives. He was an actor and singer back in the day, and he was friends, and he was on my executive committee up until he died.
Burl Ives was
interesting guy, 33rd degree Mason, all that, but he didn't know anything about the subject. So I go into his house in Anacortes, Washington, and I have this document. I didn't bring the original to it, but the one I have And it's this transcript, and it flat out, he looks and he goes, now I know why they killed her. I said, of course. And of course, Kennedy was livid that happened, because he had affection for her, even though he had the distance for political reasons. But he was working on an executive order at that time that would have dissolved the agency and a lot of these operations that were dealing with this.
The agency is in CIA?
Yeah. So before that could go through the executive review process, he was killed. Now, interestingly, it wasn't just the UFO issue, it was a bunch of issues dealing with this whole constellation of problems. Because remember, he took office right after Eisenhower. Eisenhower's last speech to the world, and he's a 5-star general, right? A 2-term Republican president. It was an Abbie Hoffman. He's the one who coined the term, beware the military-industrial complex. He wasn't anti-military. He was anti-fascist, which is the collusion and control of government interests and the interests of the people by selfish corporate and moneyed people. That's what he was talking about. People have to get clarity on this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it gets politicized. Now, this is where Eisenhower was coming from. Now, I have a witness, a guy named Stephen Lovkin, who was an attorney, but at the time he was an Army Signals Corps guy who was in the White House with Eisenhower. And he saw Eisenhower doodling pictures of UFOs and stuff. And he talked to him and he says, yeah, he says, I've lost, they're not telling me much anymore about this. I've lost control of these projects. A very interesting read. It's in the disclosure book.
It is, and it's
okay. Yeah, in that book. And so it's a worrisome situation, because I've been able to piece together the presidential level of this back all the way to Roosevelt. By the way, Foo Fighters.
I can't stop looking at that van in his
They
arm.
named their band, Dave Grohl was in Nirvana, after what a Foo Fighter is, which is what a UFO was called.
Really?
In World War II. So in World War II, we had these weird, almost
Foo Fighters.
plasma-like objects zipping around our aircraft. The Nazis thought it was a secret Allied weapon. We thought it was a secret Nazi weapon. So there's this medical doctor, this elderly guy was on my team. He was a hematologist, pathologist in Denver. And his uncle was General Jimmy Doolittle. And so this is how I knew this story. So General Doolittle was sent over there by Roosevelt to look into what the heck are these Foo Fighters. And General Doolittle comes back to the White House and tells Roosevelt, sir, those are, quote, interplanetary vehicles, I'm quoting.
So, interplanetary vehicles.
Yeah. So that's how far back this knowledge goes.
This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about the Rockefellers.
Well, only to the extent that Lawrence, who was the philosopher king, Lawrence Rockefeller, who was the brother of David Rockefeller of Chase Manhattan, that's now J.P. Morgan Chase, Lawrence wanted to help with getting this problem fixed.
Yeah, lots of money to be made with UFOs, man. I that's how my head works. Like I always try and not just follow the money, but like, where do people make money and how do they make money and what does it do? Even like with any conspiracy stuff, I always look at it to me, it's always financial and like where, why, when, and how. So yeah, a lot of money to be made. I mean, like, he's making money right now, right? Sean Ryan's making money right now.
So he hosted us at the Rockefeller Ranch in the Tetons, and was helping do things behind the scenes. And then later he hosted the Clintons there under cover of a summer vacation to go through this material that we'd put together. The best available evidence is what it was called, BAE. But I think Hillary, if I remember correctly, he told me, Hillary stood up and said, we don't want to hear too much more about this. Too dangerous, too dangerous. But he and I got to know each other quite well. His heart was in the right place. Now, he had people around him, we found out, who are actually deep cover intelligence operatives. I don't want to name who they are, but one of them, I was at their townhouse in Upper East Side. This guy had been ambassador to France for Reagan, on the board of Morgan Stanley. And he was Yale. And he told me he and William F. Buckley, the conservative journalist, were both recruited when they were at Yale into the CIA to be embedded in the corporate and political world.
That doesn't fucking surprise me at all.
His wife sort of were a duo that ended up then misdirecting Rockefeller in the wrong directions to stop that initiative. So people have to understand how really good counterintelligence operates.
See, and that's what I think he might be.
Operatives who can go in and turn things sideways.
How do I know that he's not how do we know he's not a fucking Fed in counterintelligence? That's the first thing my head fucking thinks. Crooked Hillary, huh? Yeah, I think they're all crooked, my friend. I think they're all crooked.
Now that's 93, 94, 95, so we're talking ancient history here. The big problem is people make these sweeping conspiracy theories. Most of the younger Rockefellers are actually very supportive of this coming out. Lawrence was, but now Jay Rockefeller, who had been the chairman of Senate Intelligence Committee, and David, Lawrence's brother, were both members of this committee.
All right, I want to go now. Can we watch a bit of this? I'm not going to be here on this bullshit all night, but
one night
I want to watch this documentary.
So if you're anything like me and your
okay, this is like a skeptical one. Okay, so this looks pretty good to me. I haven't watched it all the way through. It's only 16 minutes. Can be a shorter fucking live stream tonight because I don't want to. But anyways, this is a documentary I think we should watch.
So if you're anything like me and you're fascinated by UFOs and UFO research, or UAPs as they call them these days, then it's very hard to not come across Dr. Stephen Greer. Now, Dr. Stephen Greer is a medical doctor. He is a retired
I have trouble with the German accents. I ain't gonna lie.
Dedicated his whole life to the research of UFOs and the UAP phenomenon. He's also the founder of the Disclosure Project, the Center of the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which they call CSETI, the Orion Project, Serious Technology Advanced Research, a few other things. And he is probably considered one of the world's foremost authorities on all things UFO. At least that's how he sells himself. He's also produced countless documentaries. He's published many books. If you put Dr. Stephen Greer into Amazon, you find all his published works, and it's quite a lot. And I personally came across him for the first time in 2001. With the Disclosure Project. It's more than 20 years ago now.
It's about me too.
At that time,
me too there, Hans.
It was kind of a serious, semi-credible source, right? Because he put together all these quite believable and credible witnesses from the military, from other credible sources, talking about their experiences with UFOs. However, over the past 20 years, I feel personally that his credibility has suffered a little bit. And if you type in Stephen Greer into Reddit these days, you find loads of posts like this. Why is Stephen Greer demonized by the UFO community? Stephen Greer is a Satanist and a Moloch worshipper, never to be trusted, ever. Okay, in all fairness, this has 0 upvotes, but there are loads of posts that basically ask, is Stephen Greer legit? Thoughts on Stephen Greer? And people kind of doubt his credibility, also because some of his theories and the stuff that he's claiming is pretty far out there. So obviously, if you watch his documentaries, if you read his books, you will never hear critical voices against him. That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, nobody does that. Anyone who produces a documentary would not edit like his most adamant critics into that documentary. It's just naturally how it is.
I want to know what's going on. Okay, so see, dudes, you can see his headphones are wired. Are they wired to that switcher thing on his mic stand? I got the same mic as that cat. But what's that switcher thing? Does anybody know what that is? And you got that Me 3. I don't know who Unknown is. If it's one of my friends or somebody I know, throw your name in there. Or even, if you want to be anonymous, that's fine. But thanks for coming. I appreciate you.
However, there are critical voices out there. And having done a little bit more research on Dr. Stephen Greer, there is one thing that keeps coming back again and again when speaking of the credibility of Stephen Greer. And that is actually a review on Amazon written by someone who allegedly took part in one of his CSETI presentations that you have to pay for. And then he does the CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind workshops, where he kind of claims...
Okay, the CE5 shit is goofy as fuck to me. I'm just going to tell you right now. I remember when I was watching that documentary, that last one, I was right there in this documentary. I was having a good time. And then he started explaining this CE5 stuff. And I think they're going to talk about it a little bit here. And this is where I started to be like, What's going on?
To be able to contact and summon extraterrestrials and all that. So someone took part in one of his workshops and wrote his or her experience on this review on Amazon. But the interesting point about this review and why I think it is quite relevant, and again, obviously I didn't write it, I don't know the person who wrote it, so I don't know how legit it is. Take it with a grain of salt. But we're going to read through it in a minute, and in my mind, it does sound fairly credible, but obviously to what extent it's credible, you have to make up your own mind, okay? I'm not saying this is the truth or this is definitely all correct. Ultimately, this is just a review on Amazon, but the interesting point about it is that the person who wrote it is actually an ex-Stephen Greer supporter and believer. So it is someone who was...
You guys, check this out. I didn't know I could do this. Watch this. I can, boom, throw that up there, that comment right on there. It says, David Youngblood, gotta go. This one is banging. Bro, I'll check the rest out later. Thank you. And then I can remove it. I can also ban that fucker from my broadcast. I didn't know you could do that shit. That is bomb. All right, I'm sorry. That was house cleaning shit, but you're going to get that with Uncle Hammy. I'll get distracted as fuck. I don't give a shit.
Fully convinced that Stephen Greer is legit and that it's all for real. That he paid for this presentation, he paid for the workshop, going there believing that he's going to experience these incredible things, and then it didn't go quite how he or she expected it would go. So we're going to read through it.
I'm still fucking tripping on adding the comment.
Of salt. Okay, again, it's just a review on Amazon. Let's get into it. So this person is apparently based in California and calls themselves Knowledge Seeker, and the review is titled, At his CSETI workshop, I saw the real hidden truth. I followed Dr. Greer's activities with enthusiasm since 2001 when he established the Disclosure Project. I read his books, watched his interviews, and listened to his meditation CDs. I liked everything the man seemed to be about and shared his views about the need to inform the public about the presence of extraterrestrial visitors on Earth, the importance of establishing peaceful contact with those visitors in developing free or low-cost over-unity energy technologies that would clean the planet, eliminate conflict between nations, and bring about a dignified quality of life and abundance to people all over the world. I still share these goals. So you can clearly see whoever wrote this is quite familiar with the work of Stephen Greer, I would say.
Yeah.
Or it sounds like
absolutely.
That. So it was with great excitement that I signed up for the CSETI presentation and a one-day workshop with Dr. Greer that took place on November 13th and 14th, 2009 in Costa Mesa, California to experience and learn CSETI's contact protocol and to determine whether it would be worthwhile enrolling in a week-long CSETI outing with Dr. Greer.
I want to know how much that cost. We should do that research and find out what that cost.
Surprisingly, my preconceived opinion about Dr. Greer's character began to disintegrate as I listened to his presentation. It was disheartening to discover he's excessively fascinated with himself, prone to indulge his name-dropping and in bragging about his fanatic high-end and or in the know contacts and connections, not to mention the multitude of outlandish remarks he makes with a straight face, such as his impact on the rogue majestic secret government. So much so that according to him, he rejected a $2 billion payout to shut up and abandon the ET disclosure issue. I read these stories as well, and this is also a reoccurring narrative. You see this a lot on Reddit as well.
$2 billion. He made mention of this shit on fucking Sean Ryan's show. 2 billion? Seriously? 2 billion. Not 2 million. 2 fucking billion.
Post that every other month someone posts this. That Dr. Greer claims that some entity has offered him $2 billion payout so he doesn't talk about UFOs and aliens anymore. And it's like, to be honest with you, I don't think he's that powerful enough and has that many people on board. Not saying that he's a small communicator. Like I said in the beginning, you know, he is considered one of the world's most foremost authorities on the topic. But it's not that he like convinces millions and millions of people and really makes a massive difference in the world of people like going out into the desert or trying to find UFOs and all that. It is still like in the bigger picture a fairly small community of believers. So on one hand, I'm not sure he would like just discard a $2 billion payout. And on the other hand, I doubt that any entity would put that much money out there for me. But again, this is just me speculating. This is just me reading into the situation, but this is a fair point that keeps coming up. Needless to say, that night I left the auditorium less enthusiastic about what Dr. Greer is all about. But it was not until the workshop and the outing the next day that my opinion about him really changed, unfortunately for the worst. Again, during the workshop, Dr. Greer devoted some time to self-admiration while attempting to appear humble by saying, I'm just a country doctor from North Carolina. And he does say this in every single presentation that I watch from him as well. Like, he always tried to marginalize himself. Well, I'm just a country doctor, but, I can contact these extraterrestrials. It's like, I don't know. It makes my alarm bells go off, but obviously, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
By then, I was becoming quite uncomfortable about him, but as the workshop progressed, my discomfort turned into dismay as I watched how rudely he treated some attendees who asked valid questions or made harmless remarks, but whose timing or subject he deemed inappropriate. I was truly shocked and could not believe my ears and eyes as I watched him lash at them with such scornful contempt. It was so bad that I wondered if this man was consciously trying to chase these people away. Dr. Greer claims to have experienced meditative samadhi or oneness with all. If so, one would think he would have achieved a certain degree of enlightenment and a sense of kindship towards his fellow men.
That's a fucking point right there. Now, I may not know this about me, but I'm a yogi. And what I'm telling, and I don't practice that sort of yoga, but I know what samadhi is. If you get to the place where you're experiencing samadhi at all, there's a pretty good chance you're not a fucking dick. Okay? Because you're starting to understand like all this stuff's bullshit anyways, right? Like everything in the material world. So you don't necessarily take everything quite so personal.
Then why would he be so harsh and unkind? Did he forget that these people paid a significant amount of money, not only to listen, but maybe to also ask questions as well? The worst and most disheartening part of this experience was witnessing the CSETI field contract protocol. At the site, a number of devices such as a radio transmitter, magnetometer, radio detectors, infrared scope, etc. were arranged. Even though I don't doubt Dr. Greer may have had some ET experiences in the past, what I observed in the field that night is inconsistent with his hyperbolic claims suggesting he can vector ETs and make them appear. His actions and the facts demonstrated that at the very least, it is a bold exaggeration. Not surprisingly, to cover up for his assertion, Dr. Greer made sure to bring out a series of possibilities for a no-show prior to the field excursion.
So that's what I learned from his last documentary. What was it, CE5 or I forget the name of it, but like when it veered into this, they were going to do a meditative process that was going to redirect the fucking UFOs and the extraterrestrial entities to us, like through this connection. This is where it fucking lost me. And for the obvious reason, but we're not that fucking smart and powerful, right? Like, why listen to us? You flew across the galaxy, and I guess there's like a connection and a heart connection. And I understand everything that he was saying, but it just like, and I believe in the meditative process, and I believe that you can connect heart to heart with other people, other beings. I mean, take a look at your fucking relationship with your dog or your cat, right? You don't use words to communicate, but the way that he outlays it has this like air of superiority that I found to be, I don't know, I just thought it was fucking stupid.
According to him, sometimes the ETs might not appear because there's someone in the group without good intent and a clean heart, or the ETs feel threatened by US military, or even though they won't fully materialize, they will manifest in 1,000 other ways. Okay. I mean, again, this is just someone writing this in a review on Amazon. Okay, so I don't know, maybe that person is just disgruntled and angry and wants to diminish the credibility of Dr. Greer. But this, what he or she is saying here kind of goes in line with a lot of stuff that Dr. Greer says in his lectures as well. There seems to be an infinite resource of like excuses and reasons why certain things are not the way they are. And I think also the point that this person is making about him claiming that he's reached like some form of meditative enlightenment, and then he treats attendees, paying attendees to these workshops like garbage. Again, I have been there. I don't know if all this is true, but if we can believe this source, then all this rings like so many alarm bells, okay? And you would really need to be quite gullible to fall for a guy after you've seen stuff like that yourself. So I can very much understand why this person lost a lot of its belief in Dr. Stephen Greer after attending this workshop. Conveniently, there was plenty of people to hand, mostly staff, who would come forward to state that while meditating they saw this or heard that. Most amusing though were Dr. Greer's remarks at the beeps and sounds made by his electronic equipment. You see, according to him, an ET named Walter communicates via one of those electronic devices, and Dr. Greer is able to recognize which beeps he makes. Additionally, the large quantity of wow and oh my god remarks coming out of Dr. Greer's mouth over unseen or imaginary non-events was sadly hilarious. Oftentimes, he would point his mega laser beam at some spot in the sky and claim he was seeing a partly materialized ET craft. Of course, anyone else saw nothing, even though, according to him, many significant events were taking place that night because we were such a great group. To make matters worse, Dr. Greer supplemented the lack of any occurrences with information he received via remote viewing. Okay, so very, very clearly, this is drifting off. Significantly coming from the Disclosure Project, which is all about like credible sources, military observers and witnesses who say things that are just out of this world, but because they are who they are and they have this credibility that comes from their background, there's some believability to it. But reading this, again, take it with a grain of salt, it's just a review of one of his workshops, but it's clearly drifted heavily into the esoteric. It's all about believing that something is there. It's all about, oh, some people are not of clean heart and that's why the aliens are not showing up. It's all about like a spiritual connection that you make with the extraterrestrials and him like remote viewing.
See, I feel like that's where the grift is, right? Like this spiritual connection and all this stuff to the aliens. This verges on this new age spirituality, which is, you know, it's bullshit. And that it's to sell you crap, right? Going back to the money. Like it's to sell you crap. These workshops and all this stuff. I'm not buying it.
What aliens try to... So, do you see what I mean?
Which fucking, like, then invalidates all the other stuff that I want to believe from the guy, which I don't know. Is that fair? Is that fair to do?
Like it seems like at least it's come quite a long way from where we were with the Disclosure Project in 2001 to what we read here. I found this charade insulting to my intelligence, intuitiveness, and psychic sensibilities. I know ETs were not present that night, and I would have respected Dr. Greer if he had been forthright and acknowledged the fact that there was no activity. I would understand. It happens. Because I experienced firsthand Dr. Greer's tendency to fabricate, exaggerate, and embellish non-events at the CSETI field trip, it then follows that the accuracy and validity of everything he claims in his books is in question, since it's evident that, at the very least, he stretches the truth to the point where it becomes short of being an outright lie. In the past, whenever I would read negative reviews about Dr. Greer, especially ones describing him as a self-centered narcissist, I would reject them and conclude they were made by people who couldn't handle the truth. But based on what I saw and experienced firsthand, it appears that Dr. Greer is in love with himself, and because he sees himself above others, he dislikes most people. However, he desperately craves attention, so he created this ET disclosure platform to attract as large audiences as possible in order to obtain the recognition and adulation he sorely needs. In essence, regardless of the message, this messenger is so flawed, one must question the purity and true nature of his motivations. His book, conferences, and CSETI outings may be more about the money they bring than the message itself. Furthermore, unless you enjoy watching people being mistreated by Dr. Greer and don't mind embarking on a pathetic farce, I recommend you put your money elsewhere instead of spending it on any of his CSETI excursions. And then there's an update from a few months later in a letter sent to Dr. Greer, CIA Director James Woolsey, his wife Suzanne, and 2 others refute Dr. Greer's claims regarding his alleged briefing to them. Right. To read this letter in its entirety, please Google Greer Woolsey UFO Watchdog. So I'm not too familiar with this particular instance, but I do remember him saying in certain lectures where he's like, yeah, I've briefed those guys and I'm in close contact with the Majestic program. He often claims to be part of like certain insiders, top secret programs within the government. Again, I can't personally check the credibility of this person, but having kind of followed him since 2001, again, I feel there is a massive decline incredibility happening in the things he says, and that's just me personally interpreting what he says. Also, astronaut Ed Mitchell refutes claims made by Dr. Greer and Jeff Reens' website. To read Mitchell's statement, please Google Ed Mitchell unhappy with Greer. So reports like this once again reiterate on the conclusion that I've come to after looking into the UFO phenomenon for like almost 25 years at this point. 99% of people who are claiming to be experts and who give these lectures and who travel the world and put out videos and books, it's way more about the money in my personal experience than it is actually about bringing disclosure or ending the censorship around UFOs and finally surfacing the truth and all that. That's what a lot of these people claim, but kind of as it is confirmed in this review here that we just read, it seems like the priority is not exactly the disclosure, okay? It seems to be a big scheme that just generates a lot of money. And again, that doesn't mean that every single UFO report, every single thing that has been spotted in the sky is automatically false and is automatically part of some kind of grift where people just try to generate money. There are incredible cases out there, right? There are very, very credible witnesses and stories that really need some explaining. There is some of that out there. But in the bigger picture, it's a massive money-making industry. My feeling for a long time has been that whenever I watched anything from Dr. Greer, that he is mostly part of this whole world of UFO research for the money, because it returns solid cash, especially if you're kind of, as he claims to be himself, one of the world's foremost authorities on all things UFO and UAP. It is a profitable business. Again, I can't say whether everything he says is true, whether he is legit. I just wanted to share the story with you guys. I don't know the person who wrote it, but it's a good story, brother. Having seen him in all these lectures and having seen his development from the Disclosure Project to where he is today, it kind of falls in line with the suspicions I had. But that's just me. That's just my personal opinion. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you believe this?
So, I don't know what to think, man. I mean, I think I know what to think. I feel like he's a fucking huckster, right? I feel like he's a fucking huckster. Check it out. See that right there? It's been here forever on top of my drum, which means I'm not playing my drum. I might want to do something about that. I feel like Greer might be a huckster, or there's like truth in some of what he's saying. His documentaries are fucking fascinating, though. I mean, I'd recommend them. I do. But I don't know, man. I think we're gonna dig a little bit deeper into him. We're gonna do some of this not next, but soon on Jeremy Corbell. He's got a pretty interesting little podcast that I think I want to review and do some live streaming with you. He's a fucking nut, though, and he gets into the whole like Thomas Lazar and all that. Those guys are all tied up with that George Knapp or whatever the fuck his name is. So I like this shit. To me, I don't get too caught up in like believing it. It's almost like they're like mockumentaries, you know, when I watch them. I enjoy them. But anyways, so I think that's about all I got for tonight, guys. I'm going to go make some dinner and be with my family this Saturday night. Listen, these are, if you look down here on the screen, these are all the places you could find me. All right. These are all the places you can find me. Please go there, like, subscribe. I got different content up on most of them. And I think that's it from me. Until next time. And by the way, anybody that watched on Twitch, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys. So anyways, with that, I love you. I hope you have a good night. Namaste. Be well.